Good evening. For all of you attending courses, I hope you had a great day today. I understand it was a slower day somehow. So welcome to the public program, Summer School of School 2018. Tonight I'm very happy to have part of our program presentation by Felix Gmelin and Samika. We'll start with a presentation by Felix Gmelin, concentrated on a work that we showed last year as part of the public program. The work is called "We Wish You Welcome to an Active, Inspiring, and Participatory Day." It was broadcasted at KTV. This is a national broadcasting company. In collaboration with KTV, this work was displayed to a larger audience, basically. Of course, translated with subtitles in Albanian language. Felix would talk, I guess, not only about this work, but generally about practice. But I hope you can concentrate more on this work. I will read something from his biography, and you have text in the space. I'll just be brief. So Felix Gmelin lives and works in Oslo. He studied at the Royal Institute of Art in Stockholm and currently serves as a professor of contemporary art at the Oslo National Academy of the Arts. He also teaches at the International Academy of the Arts in Palestine. There are some changes also in this part of the biography. In 2010, Gmelin was awarded the Carnegie Art Award for a work that is an almost archaeological exploration of the social and political ramifications of the tactility and expressiveness of painting. Felix's course this year is concentrated on painting. It was intentional. Basically, we invited him to, let's say, to design a course on painting. A key topic in early performance art, Gmelin returns to his field of action in a complex work that he considers that painterly touch by passing through the media of film, painting, and printed stills. There's a list of exhibitions which include Porticus in Frankfurt, Malbakunst Museum, Gasworks in London, and Simmons. Maybe it's important to mention it was part of the October Salon in 2006 in Belgrade, created by Barbara Hennig and Brendan Block. This is for participants from the region that maybe had a chance to see his work. The full schedule of the public program can be found on our website and our social media pages. Felix has been part of this program since a few years back now. Always great to have him with us. Thank you for being here. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. In the afternoon, I decided to be a bit more generous and to talk only about one work, because also I have this painting class, and maybe some of you don't know my work from before. But I will conclude with the work that Albert curated for television. So when I was a young boy, my mother told me my father's students were making films about how to make a machine gun out of a Hoover. I don't know, maybe that's why I'm teaching today. I guess that it seemed exciting to be around students. I grew up in the middle of political upheaval. 1968, my father was teaching at the DFFB, the German Film Academy. It was the first generation of students, including among them Harun Farouki, who I know has been shown in a number of classes here. This image is from when they occupied the school and renamed the Berlin Film Academy into the Evaluators Academy. Here you see them in the midst of this occupation. And among them also Olga Mainz. This is an image of Rudi Dutschke, who was killed by the police in 1968, I believe this was, in an anti-Shah operation. And this is Olga Mainz, a student of my father at the Film Academy, who died and who was part of the Rote Armee Fraktion, the Red Army Fraction, also called the Bader-Meinhof Group, and died in prison in Wittlich in 1972. And this kind of marked the end of this era, I would say. 72, the left kind of exhausted its radical potential. At that point, in a sense, also for us who came after, there was no option for radical action. So I guess I just ignored the whole thing. I started painting, and I was very interested in formal things, like contrast, color, tactility. Nevertheless, this didn't last very long. And quite quickly, conceptual issues came into my painterly work. This is, for example, if you turn it around, you see a diagram, and on the right-hand side you see employed artists. So it's a statistical diagram, and on the other side you see unemployed artists. This is also an early show where I use site specificity as an argument to do painting. So we were invited to a local museum, which is donated by 19th century prints to the Swedish people. And what I did was repaint. I built a room which was the same as. This is my painting, kind of adapting the style of that era and those painters in an attempt to create the déjà vu of the museum. So this image is downstairs. This is the original museum, and this is my installation, one staircase up, one floor up from in the same museum. This is the Happy Museum director with my paintings and flower pots designed by his prince. The flower pots are kind of a significator of bourgeois taste in Sweden. So a kind of upper class IKEA almost. And we heard about Kazimir Malevich the other day, and this is a research-based group of works which reproduces lovingly destroyed artworks. So it's vandal acts performed by often artists on top of artworks which were made mainly with radical intentions. This one was destroyed by Tony Shafrazi, who nowadays is a gallerist, running the real estate of Francis Bacon, but at the time called himself for action artist, and he sprayed the words "Kill Lies" all on top of Guernica. Later, he claimed that he wanted to bring the painting up to date because museums had killed it. So he wanted to try to make us deal with it in a more active way. This is a group of works that this is around 12 works. This is after Alexander Bologna on Malevich, a green dollar sign, which I raised, so interpretation was an important part of this group of works. This is the erased Ikunin drawing in green. It's pretty funny stories, all of these. This is a case of poisoning. An artist runs into Paul Cooper Gallery in the 80s and eats a donut by Robert Cooper, which he learns is preserved with Rowplex, and he ends up in hospital. And this is after Stacion, a member of the Cobra group, who actually made a section for the improvement of museums, which could bring up to date old collection by putting grease on top. Here is a documentary photograph of that event. I'm sorry about this mess. We don't know how to really make one file out of this. In 2002, having taught for many years at an art school in Stockholm, and also teaching photographers and filmmakers artistic means and methods, I wanted to do a video, and I had a production company, and I was writing a manuscript, and it was supposed to be about a killer, but I didn't find the words, and through a biography written by Musa Maya, who's the daughter of Felix Gmelin, I came to the idea to talk about inheritance. So I was talking out of the perspective of inheriting something, an archive, also trying to make sense out of this killer. In the middle of writing this manuscript, I met a student by my father, Gerd Konrad, and he gave me this film. So on the left-hand side, you saw this film, or in the beginning, with these two runners now, and the first image is from 1968, and made within a camera seminar led by Michael Ballhaus. Students were supposed to film a movement, and Gerd Konrad came up with this idea, inspired by Muybridge and Warhol, to film a relay race through Berlin and end it on the Schöneberger Rathaus, which is a very symbolic place, by hoisting a red flag on the Schöneberger Rathaus. This balcony is the place where John F. Kennedy said the famous words, "Ich bin ein Berliner." And the guy who hoisted the flag, we've seen just a minute ago, was Holger Mainz, also a student by my father and is member of the Rote Armee Fraktion. And on the right, we see my co-teacher here, Thomas Elofsson, actually, who's running 2002 this is. We basically repeat the same action in Stockholm with my students and colleagues, but never got up the flag. I got a note. Later I learned that in Berlin they had asked to film the traffic situation and never talked about the red flag, and I was stupid enough to ask Thomas to red flag. so I got to know them. And my manuscript went down the drain. I mean, I decided to do this very small piece out of a quite long process, just to tell you a little bit how I'm working. Often research-based and then kind of penetrating the problem, expanding the material, cutting down the material, trying to figure out what's interesting, and in the end there might be something quite small leaving the studio. This was my first video and quite a success, which gave me the possibility to kind of, in mid-career, to reinvent myself, I would say. And I started to do more videos, and based on a research what 1968 had, generation of my father, had achieved, or what had gone down the drain, which ideas have succeeded, which have failed. There were a number of topics like early childhood education, sexual revolution, perception, drugs, etc., feminism, all these issues. I was researching quite systematically, and also using film material from my father's archive, which I had inherited after his death. So here we see, on this one, we see a film by Michael Markisch, which is the propaganda film called Traktat on the Usability of a Plant, and it tells us how to smoke pot, and that socialism would become better if it would have listened to the individual, if it would have been linked to individual development. And I was thinking to juxtapose this against something else that would give it sense. I found this film in the television archive, which compares Swedish and Chinese childhood education, and claims that Sweden should learn from China, which is using collectiveness and sacrifice for the collective as a means to become a better society. So it's two opposed ideas of a utopia, of a better society, that are told in a didactic voiceover way. And what I did was to swap the soundtracks, which makes the piece quite funny and tragic. This is a sketch for a video installation. It's based on a seminar my father held at the Marburg University, where he did performances with his students. And this is Helmut, who's trying to play dead and look like Lukas Kranach the younger in his portrait of Jesus Christ. And what my father did was he filmed a pan, so I cut apart the pan and sliced up the pieces where he's actually following the body. So in this work, the body is slowly jumping. I mean, it's kind of like this, and then there's a jump cut. So he's slowly moving. This is called Sound and Vision, and it's based on a quite embarrassing scene where my father helped me to be spontaneous into the camera, which you see on a small monitor in the back, and so at the same time, simultaneously, he's making a synesthetic sound. So he's holding in front of the camera an orange, for example, and making a sound to it. So it goes like this. And so on. And then he tells me, act. So he acts basically like a child, and I'm this shy teenager, pretty embarrassed about the situation. And here I juxtaposed it with educational video, a Swedish one, which is based on sociologists proposing that blind children should not understand genitals by looking at models, but actually that they should touch real human beings. So we have these two pretty youngsters in front of a group of blind kids who really don't want to touch them, but then the teacher forces them to touch them with good intentions, of course. So it's these two very ambiguous emotional things that somehow have something that share, in a sense, content. Another video I found interesting is maybe that my father never showed these videos, so they're kind of a home video thing. And he didn't have editing possibilities, so everything was edited in the camera, but from early on, when VHS turned on to the market, he had a video camera and kind of did quite elaborate projects. This one is, in this one you see him on top of something that seems like a bed together with a woman, but after a while you recognize that these are sheets, many sheets of canvas, and what they're doing is greasing paint onto each other and onto these sheets. So in a sense they are painting, yes, they're doing some kind of body painting, and as far as I can see, it is a comment on automobile and Yves Klein's more patriarch ways of painting, where Yves Klein uses women or models as brushes, and automobile replaces the canvas with a woman, so he paints on top of models. What I did with this material was that I watched the video electronically, cleaned it up, and then took out stills and painted them. And some are made with copy machines. This is terrible, now they don't even open.
Seems like it's open in the same,
Here? Ah, bingo. Wow!
I don't know why.
Can I do this full screen? This is what we were looking for.
There's a third one.
Can I do this? No, I can't. Okay, here you can see the video on the left, or the stills I took out from a video. On the right you see the paintings. So it's a kind of editable painting project where I used the material, reused my father's material, and also in a sense, in a lingual way, comment on it. Now I'm painting it in a different style than he does. Or with a different method. I didn't know either. Okay, I'll keep it like that. Education was, of course, quite an important thing for 1968. I mean, the revolution needs to be told, no? So child education was an important issue. In this piece, which is performed, this is maybe my only performance piece. This is Bracy Fishbone from Bristol, reading a text by my father about utopia. And what he says is, in very difficult words, that society should listen to the individual and the changes that come from the individual to stay alive. And this girl is 9 years old, so she doesn't really understand what she's reading. But she is talking about her future, so she embodies actually what she's reading. And now I will go over to one of my latest works, which is this, which Albert was asking about, which is called We Wish You Welcome to. This was a song.
Okay, okay. I showed the cheat game, so I started first with an introduction to the employees. So I thought our customer is very often at the moment, and we need in 10 minutes a lot of finished this one, this kind of this product.
Is it cheap?
And then I started with not the first term, so the production. I showed employees.
Yeah. Okay. Because it's you want to stand there because then this one. So is it possible that we can stand here and show what to do from here because everyone can see and we can get the picture because when we stand here or even if we put the picture more there.
Maybe I talk about it. It's called We Wish You Welcome to Participatory Day. It's a documentary based on a staged educational situation, and the idea came out of that the Bologna Treaty has created a quite big influence, political influence on education, and also neoliberal thought is more and more coming into these situations, into the universities. And I wanted to see what this looks like in reality, and it is based on an example which is coming from Tromsø, where they actually did this. They hired a Kaizen pedagogue, coach. Kaizen is a methodology coming from Toyota. In the 80s, they developed this effectivization, working together methodology. And they can prove that if you work with them, your results get better. They make the workers work together and they make different games to test this. And this was presented at an art school in Tromsø as a method for effectivization. The teacher I heard this story from was quite upset and angry about this and said, what sense does it make? And what I did for an exhibition at the Edith House in Oldenburg, I restaged this with a local TV channel. They work with the local TV channel there often for documenting what they're doing on the museum. But now they decided to let me do an artwork there. So basically the language of this film is the language of the TV station. It's cut. This first part is filmed by a student of mine who was part of the project, but the second part is filmed by the television studio. You see it comes up here soon. This part, you can see also that the lighting is different, more professional, etc. What the video in a sense does is of course, is mocking this poor guy, the Kaizen pedagogue, because the students are university students, they are quite aware of what situation they are in. and he, in a sense, is not. Or, I mean, to stage him here, I treated him extremely well, because if I would make fun of him, I wanted him to feel confident. No? So I was talking to him as a colleague, as two teachers, and trying to make him feel comfortable. And also gave him the possibility to discuss the discourse that this work might put him into. The funny thing that the closer he came to the realization of this, he closed down and more focused on this game. And the game is the following. It's an effectivization game. So in, I think, 5 rounds, these 6 students, or were there 5, I think, they try to make a chicken origami as quickly as possible, and as many as possible, and as proper as possible. And to begin with, they get bad instructions, and then they are supposed to improve this, and that they do obediently, and in the end there's actually some kind of euphoria about how effective they have become. But of course this film is about something totally different. It's about how governmental structures or effectivization ideas coming from, for example, the car industry, what effect they can have on the humanities. That's the bottom line, the unsaid bottom line of this film. And it becomes pretty funny here in different ways. In the first chapter, he's trying to learn how to act within the television studio. It's quite chaotic. And in the second, then they do 3 rounds, the students, of this effectivization game, and in the end they all hug and are quite happy. What this work taught me is that actually what I'm coming back to, I mean, the color test film put me a lot into exhibition, and My Flag Repeats also a historical act now, so out of this came a lot of theory. Ink Arns wrote a book about this, how to go back into history to find forgotten potentials within utopian thoughts that haven't been realized. You can look at them, and actually what she's interested in is a lot from this region. Leibach and Neue Slowenische Kunst is one of her examples about this, but also these three works I talk about. I can read something here about it. The American art historian Nato Thompson points out that historians, editorialists and philosophers have described the first decade of the 21st century as a period unaware of its own history, a period that managed to step outside of time itself. With the eclipse of the Cold War and the emergence of a globalized world, what role does history and its prevailing sense of progress play? In answer to this question, he says, many artists have taken up the charge and begun resituating and analyzing historical events. Whether it is the accuracy of the official story, the impossibility of historic memory today, the recreation of the past into the present, or the obstinate refusal to accept a historical period as acceptable, these artists cull from the landmarks in the global timeline to position the present and give shape to the future, he writes. The Dutch art historian Maxime Kopsa has commented the cyclical theme in art and politics, starting that these artists are trying to retell us our favorite bedtime story. With each slight alteration of the original of the first time, reading personal commentary of them in the now. And there's a consolation in that. A consolation not too different from the solace of the unchanged parental home as banal as the relief of a trusted restaurant, the return to the same hotel, the conviction of a brand of toothpaste, the conciliation of recognition. I'll stop there with this. Anyway, just to end this talk, what I think these very heterogeneous things have in common, I'm starting to realize is that they all in different ways in the last few years have tried to put ideology different onto the table and examine it from different points of angles in an attempt to see what they're worth in practice. So in this case, the restaging is an attempt to see what this looks like. So Jan Ravot just wrote a text about this. I can read a little bit about that, out of that one also. Exercises, rehearsals, repeats. What does it even mean to teach anybody anything? From a certain point of view, you could say that this question is the key to Felix's work. It's a topic to which his work can be found and to return time and again with diminished urgency. Yet, on top of being its subject matter, pedagogy, in fact, is also the topos, the place the work inhabits and departs from. The existential horizon and discursive arena in which the work takes place. In this twofold sense, many, if not most, of Gmelin's works are exercises in pedagogy. When I use the word exercise, I don't mean to say that there were tasks given by the artist for participants and audience to solve. Rather, that his works are exercise insofar that they hold in the challenge inherent to a scenario to which anyone, including the artist, will be exposed when partaking in the scenario. Literally a participant in the making of the piece, or empathically as the viewer. They are exercises in the sense of practical meditations on problems that may not be easy to solve, on power dynamics, on power dynamics one gets involved in. In the very act of meditating upon them, in this respect, practical meditations on a problem resemble rehearsals. One rehearsal, what it means to grapple with a given challenge. The French word for rehearsal is repetition. Indeed, an exercise is a practical meditation on a problem in what it repeats, in that it repeats the problem. In the act of rehearsing ways of confronting it. So if restaging a reenactment can be found to form a key feature of Felix Gmelin's work, I would propose to look at it in terms of what in a more general and more practical sense could be understood as the vital quality of repetition. It is an exercise, a rehearsal in grappling with a problem. Maybe I can stop there because time is running out. No? Questions?
Questions? Just to repeat here. Thank you. Thank you very much, folks.
I apologize for my technical lack of skills here.
Yeah, well, it was interesting. It looked like it's intentional. Does anyone have any questions or comments? I have one, but I'm trying to give space before. Okay, so.
Everything crystal clear.
Yeah. Or they just started to. The one question that I have, even from before, and I could never have time to ask you, is like, your father appears a lot, even in the stories or the works and around it. How do you explain that? I mean, yes, I mean, we have this going on, but nowadays that is also considered a bit problematical.
It is.
Like, yeah. Can you talk a bit about that?
I mean, I would say, I mean, I'm not romantic like Wagner, who wants art the art to be implemented on everything. But I would say, rather like Hans Hacker says, it invaded me. I couldn't keep it out, really. I mean, Hans Hacker starts with these super romantic works, no? Which are about nature and physics, and then it suddenly gets super political, no? And why? Because he couldn't leave it out. It invaded me, I would say. I didn't choose it. In my later works, yes, I started to work with my mother. And I started to look at the world, so that's a conscious decision. This is a period which is kind of over. I mean, the two latest works I've done one is about a giraffe, which was killed at the Copenhagen Zoo, which I made as a vaudeville first, and then as an exhibition. And then it's this film piece about education. So, I mean, I'm starting to look outside of my own family again. But I mean, I would say I was quite lost as an artist to begin with, because I didn't know what to talk about. I mean, I developed skills, but didn't know what to do with them. And once I was invaded by this theme 1968, which I grew up with, I mean, these students of my father's, they sat in our kitchen, so, I mean, I was literally inhaling the smoke of Bologna Process, you know, as a child. I was in the middle of history, in that sense. And not denying that was kind of the way to get a voice, I would say. But yes, it is problematic because it keeps you out of looking at the world, you know? So yes, I shouldn't. And there's also, some say, a nostalgic element in it, no? Although I'm really interested in trying to say something with this material now. Old film footage has a certain tangle to it. We were discussing this in class today. How, I mean, if you want to change society, how do you deal with nostalgia then, for example?
Any other? Okay. If not, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, 10 minutes break before the next. Thank you.